Hey everyone, it's Matt C, and welcome to another Driven Stories episode. So, I actually recorded like two other Driven Stories, and they just weren't. Wasn't feeling it. Like one was about like Hollywood and Black Mermaids, and the other was I don't even remember. It was already memory hold. Like it just felt like they were stale as soon as I said it. Um, yeah, just not really timeless, not really principles that I think people can apply to any kind of story, any kind of genre, that kind of thing. Too topical. Don't really care. so, um, this one, so I was kind of getting back to my roots because it took me, it's taken about a week to think of another topic. Unfortunately, I wanted to do two a week, and this one took me 7 days, and I'm just trying to figure out like um, what kind of sorry, it's Driven Stories, and I'm driving. Some guys just kind of like hanging out at a stop sign. So I was kind of thinking like, where do I really get my storytelling principles from? And I had to go back to John Truby in particular. That's the guy I always kind of talk about. I really like the Man in the High Castle series on Amazon, and saw a script writer for that really talking up John Truby in his book. So it just kind of like reconnected me back to how like the guy knows what he's talking about. There's people that are doing good stuff on television today who look to him. So yeah, something he really focuses on is he's a script writer for not for comics, but for movies and television in particular, and he talks about it. This goes with cinema to more than anything, that people are really buying genres. Hollywood is buying and selling genres more than anything else. It's not selling actors or scripts so much as it's selling genre. I mean, that's probably obvious to most people when you say it that way. Superhero, sci-fi, that kind of thing, romantic comedies, because people can't. And I'm just going to tie this down into comics from here on. Uh, People can't really tell uh, if you're a good writer or not until they read your comic, right? They can tell if you're a good artist, or if you hired a good artist. They can't tell if you hired a good writer. Sometimes people read the speech bubbles. In my experience, it's very little when they're previewing a book, and they need some confidence that you are strongly directed in a particular direction that they are familiar enough with to know whether or not they like the direction that you've taken or not, and that's the sort of thing that a genre does for people, especially today, and especially in comics, in the American industry in particular, where genre it's been kind of as far as probably the majority of comic book readers are concerned in America, it's a mono genre pretty much. It's either superheroes or it's superheroes in with a different skin on them. That's kind of what people expect. So you kind of you're working against the grain. It's not impossible, especially with graphic novels and things like that. I mean, there are other genres, but most people have been lifelong superhero comics readers in America, so that's just the reality. And it's always easier to get to tell a story to those people who already read comics and know that they enjoy them and know what genre they enjoy, and figure out a creative spin on how to tell them a story that's satisfying to them, than to try and get people who don't care about comics at all and are trying and get them to, just because of the genre that you're using, say, crime thriller to um, actually try your comic, because they never knew that they could go to Image and get a lot of good, um, crime drama comics. Uh, yeah, that's kind of like a sidebar, but so genre is how you sell your story. That's what people. That's what the marketplace is defined by, is what genres are available to people. So does that mean that there are, that this is a cut and paste kind of thing? Of course not. And the thing that's going to make your story interesting is actually how you combine genres, which is really really difficult, because you're gonna combine genres, but you're gonna have to hit all the main notes of each of the genres that you're combining. You're gonna have to hit those tropes, or people are gonna feel like you've missed the mark. That's just the case. You feel that way when you see like westerns, for instance. So that I was gonna just kind of use westerns as an example. Uh, 310 to Yuma. I'm trying to think of. There's been some kind of let's see. I think a lot of people saw the Magnificent Seven remake, and I think that did okay, just because everyone saw it. So I'm trying to think of rather than thinking of bad westerns, just think of good westerns. What makes a western, right? A western, by definition, this is how I define it. I was kind of looking up stuff, and I think this is pretty much how other people talk about it too. A western is a story on the fringes of civilization, where societal comforts and securities are pretty much completely unavailable, and a moral framework and system that you would find in the city is not relativistic, but I guess like atomized down to particular individuals. It's a very individual driven kind of genre, and it's going to take. Getting ahead of myself. Uh, so the Western, it's not just about the country versus the city. It's also about progress versus like the present versus the future, the past versus the future. So there's that's a theme that you'll find in every Western I can think of. And so the city represents progress, right? The trains are coming through. The cowboy represents what was once required for an outlaw time, and now that the law is coming in and domesticating the frontier, the cowboy is no longer needed, and they become, you see this in so many, at least half cowboy Western stories. You see that the cowboy is a maybe a necessary evil at times, but is a dinosaur in need of extinction, in a way, of either keeping up with the times or moving on. I saw what's a good Western. Just saw this like a month ago, and I really liked it. I can't even remember the name of it, but it was the two rangers who were tracking down Thelma and Louise. Oh gosh, I almost had it and I lost it. That was fantastic Western, and it was set in the when is that? Early 1930s, late 1920s, and they're all running around in cars the whole time. It's a Western, so that's how you make it interesting. That's how you combine. I don't know how it combines genres. I'm not that smart, but it gave a interesting and unique, fresh spin on the Western genre by setting it in a time period in which we're not used to seeing Westerns. And yet every single trope of Westerns was hit. And yeah, so what am I trying to do with Kyrie? That's my comic book. It's set in the 3rd century in North Africa, and it's a Western in many ways. It's a combining of a couple genres. There's just the mythic, heroic journey genre. There's which ties in very closely with the fantasy genre generally, and it also it's very much a Western. So it's a Western. It's also like Indiana Jones, which is, you know, high adventure treasure hunting kind of genre. And yeah, like it follows actually The Last Crusade pretty well, which always had kind of a sweet spot for that movie. And yeah, but a Western in particular is what I'm trying to pull off with Kyrie. So there's a clash between the civilized quote unquote world and the untamed wild quote unquote world, and that goes down to different people groups that reside in each of those areas. It's philosophically a subject that's of central importance to the story. It's very individually driven kind of thing. Like it starts off in Alexandria, which is one of the peak, the most civilized cities in the world. And by page 8, I think it is, you meet two cowboys and a cowgirl, and their infiltration of that civilized world and how they quickly escape that world. They're there to get what cowboys and cowgirls do, what they, which is, well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's all about vigilante justice, or vigilante, vigilante justice, or looking out for yourself, trying to get rich quick as an individual, trying to get revenge as an individual on another individual, those kind of frameworks. And as they leave civilization and they progressively get farther and farther away from it, Alexandria is on the top tip of Egypt, and 2/3 of Egypt is pretty barren. Same goes for Libya, where they travel through in book 1, and they keep going west. So that's kind of a big traveling west is to travel to the edge of the earth in the Western genre. That's kind of the ultimate. That's you're hitting a wall when you get to the West Coast, and that's something that they're doing in this story too. And yeah, I could say more about the Western genre, but that's kind of where I'm at, and that's how it applies in a broad sense to Kyrie. It's also about progress versus regress, different definitions of that. In my story, there's critiques of both viewpoints. Sometimes people pretty go heavily in the progress, or the I don't know. They champion the city over the country, or they champion the country over the city. And I try to do that. I try to show there's a different way to evaluate both, that show the strengths and weaknesses of both, and how they help to highlight each other's weaknesses and bring out each other's strengths too. Anyway, that's kind of why you need to understand genre, because people are buying and selling based on genre. They need to know, they don't know how well you can write, but if they can get a sense, even if it's subconscious, of what your genre is, that's going to fill in gaps for them as they make purchasing decisions, and that's going to help you a lot. So that's something I'm going to be doing a bit better. I hope I'm going to be being more intentional about that. I've been selling Kyrie as an adventure treasure hunting genre, which it very much is, but I've combined it with a western, and um, a lot of people like westerns. A lot of Americans like westerns, so I think bringing that up more would probably help. In anticipation for a book two coming out in about 6 months' time. So yeah, that's Driven Stories for today. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.